Quay, Upsalatic. Hello, welcome. My name is Neil Silcox. Welcome to Nothing for Us Without Us, a great session that I'm really excited about. I am speaking to you today from Kjipuktuk in Mi'kma'ki, unceded territory under the treaties of peace and friendship. And I'll invite you, if you'd like, in the chat to let me know where you're joining from. I look forward to hearing from you. I'm really excited about today's session. We're joined by 4 of the 10 3M student fellows of 2022. We had a great year at the Maple League where each of the 4 Maple League schools was successful in producing, that sounds bad, in having one of our students earn this fellowship. And we are joined by all of them today to talk about the future of universities and about their project that is coming up that they are tackling with their fellow fellows. So please welcome me in joining Oorja Gonepavaram. Oorja graduated from Mount Allison this spring, where she studied commerce, economics, and Japanese. And Oorja is currently speaking to us from Japan, where it is just after midnight. So hello, Oorja, welcome. I'm also pleased to welcome Olivia Stevenson, who's going into her 4th year in kinesiology at Acadia University and was just talking about how happy she is that she has purchased a window air conditioner. So bravo, a great step in everyone's life. Ben Boudreau graduated from St. Francis Xavier University this fall in human kinetics and sports management, and he's currently pursuing his master's at Dalhousie, and I am told that he has ducked out of a class in order to be here today. So thank you for sacrificing your learning and your future for our sake, Ben. Finally, Sufia Langevin is going to her 4th year of secondary education and social studies at Bishop's University, and she's calling in from her parents' house in Montreal. Welcome. I'm so pleased to have you all here. I shared some questions with this group ahead of time so that they know what's coming. And so in the order in which I just introduced you, Oorja, Olivia, Ben, Sufia, could you just tell me briefly about yourself and about the journey that led you to the 3M Student Fellowship? Oorja, can we start with you?
Hi, my name is Oorja Gonepavaram. I am an international student, or at least was an international student in Mount Allison University. I just graduated, hopefully. Grades haven't not gone in yet, but I majored in commerce and minored in Japanese studies and economics. I am currently in Japan, where it is humid and hot, and I have this little fan that like helps me stay sane, and I'm completing my degree in Japan right now through an exchange program from Mount Allison in Waseda University, and what led me to going into 3M was like considering 3M NSF was just a tap on the shoulder from my professor, who's also my mentor, Dr. Susan Andrews from the religious department of Mount Allison University. And she just was like, yeah, I've nominated you. Now you have to do the work, 15 pages, do all of this. And it was kind of okay because like I didn't have a semester, like I didn't have any work that semester, so I was like, okay, I can do it. But yeah, it was a long and vigorous process. But please don't do that. I'm sorry, I just read the comment. Yeah, my grades still have to go from like Japan to like Canada, but yeah, so that's kind of what pushed me into doing 3M. But like what really pushed me into writing the whole essay and the whole process and going through with it was the fact that the topic was about leadership. As someone who's always considered myself a follower, like I don't have the innate creativity, the like intense, eureka moments that a lot of leaders seem to have. So I always considered myself that I would always be a follower. So I wrote this essay just to prove to myself that I can also be a leader, and I have taken up leadership positions, and so like that was the reason why I chose to do 3M NSF.
I love that. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Oorja. Olivia, I'll throw over to you.
Awesome. Hopefully you can all hear me over my AC fan. Hi everybody. My name is Olivia. I also go by Liv, but call me whatever you would like. I am going into 4th year at Acadia University, which is in Wolfville, Nova Scotia. And I am studying kinesiology. So that is the study of human movement. And with my degree, I'm also doing my honors, which is actually in e-health wellness platforms and trying to figure out how to help more individuals receive the help that they need for mental health. And then I'm also in the practicum program at my school where I'm studying strength and conditioning. So I've already received my personal training certification, but that's not really my area of interest for the future for my career. I'm hoping to actually go into translational medicine. So that's kind of all the nitty gritty academic stuff. But outside of that, I am a yoga teacher. So I'm a 200-hour certified yoga teacher. I also have yoga nidra certification and vinyasa krama certification. I am a big sister to my younger brother who's 18, and then my much younger sister who is 4, turning 5 in October. And I am a lover of most things. I love baking and cooking and eating yummy foods. I love reading and learning and just kind of being able to connect with people. I think that's one of the reasons why the 3M fellowship was so interesting to me, is because I wanted to be able to connect with more people. If you've ever been to Wolfville, Nova Scotia, you know that it is one street and one street only, which is wonderful because you meet so many people, but then you meet so many people and that's all that you meet. So it was really special to kind of have this opportunity to be able to reach out to more people and connect with so many different people from around the world and just create these like long lasting friendships and relationships and have these amazing conversations. It was wonderful. But yeah, and then I guess the reason why I actually even found out about 3M was from wasn't even a teacher. It was a administrative individual at Acadia who I was working with for one of my classes for personal training. And I didn't actually get the opportunity to finish working with her, but she reached out to me much later in the year and was like, we met for an hour and talked, and I really think that you should consider signing up for this. So it was just that one simple connection that led to me being able to connect with so many others and all of these amazing faces that you see on the screen today. So it's a little bit about me.
Awesome. Thank you, Olivia. Yeah, we'll fill one street, but it's a pretty good street, so it makes up for it. Up next, we have Ben Boudreau. Ben, can I throw to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So hi, my name is Ben Boudreau. I go by he, him pronouns. So I was born and raised in a small town, Antigonish, kind of like one street, kind of like Olivia was saying. But now I'm in Halifax, currently doing my CRMBA at Dal and skipping a little bit at the end of accounting class right now. But if you guys have any questions about accounting, let me know. I probably can answer them to the most part. I'm also a former human kinetics student as well at StFX. What kind of led me to the 3M fellowship is that it had like a heavy focus on innovation, and it kind of made me kind of sort of think about myself in an interesting way, because I started a business in my 2nd year that helped me pay for this ring that's on my hand. That's the 3rd most recognizable ring in the world. And my business is called StFX Boxes. So I started this business with the intent in mind and goal in order to pay for this ring on my hand. And I ended up creating a bursary. Like after paying for my own X ring, I was able to create a bursary to help another student to pay for their own X ring as well. So this kind of like had some heavy focus and innovation. And then I was also volunteering with Angie Colin at the time, who was a former teaching fellow. And she kind of like Liv said before, kind of like someone just tapped her on the shoulder and said like, hey, have you ever thought about doing this? And it kind of led me into the spot where I was like, oh, I never knew about this. But no, I'm very happy that she tapped me on the shoulder, because I got to meet so many great student leaders. Like met 3 of them today. So, and we have 10 absolutely amazing people, and just a lot of people who are very passionate about higher education and innovation, and as well as leadership. So yeah, I guess that's my little spiel about myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. And finally, Sophia, can I throw to you?
Absolutely. So I'm Sufia Langevin. I'm at Bishop's University. I'm entering my 4th year, hopefully my final year. And I'm in secondary education and social studies. So I'm working to become a history geography teacher in the high schools here in Quebec. But I'm looking at grad school, so we'll see. I'm passionate about like a couple of things. Well, a couple of things. I'm passionate about a lot of things, but particularly I love music. I play the drums, and I've been a competitive debater for the last 6-7 years. And I'm really, really passionate about that and the skills that it brings to students, which is kind of what got me into teaching in the first place. In terms of what led me to the 3M Student Fellowship, I talk a lot about my experiences at Bishop's, and what I call my kind of like season opener of my time at Bishop's was this weekend retreat called the Leadership Retreat that I was fortunate enough to be selected to go on back in my first year. I think it was in my 2nd month at Bishop's. And I talk a lot about how that was a really transformative experience for me, primarily because of the amazing people and other like student leaders that I got to meet at Bishop's. And it was really through these people that I ended up finding out and applying for the 3M National Student Fellowship. One of the people who was running that retreat was my nominator, Katie Bibbs. I'm very thankful for her. And also my friend Philippe was a fellow before me in the cohort before me, and he really pushed me to apply this year. I like to be really transparent about kind of the messiness of journeys. I actually applied 2 years in a row. I was not successful my first year, and I was a bit dejected about it in the second year. I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to apply. And everyone was really encouraging. They were like, absolutely, you should go for it. So I did, and I did end up being successful my second year. So I'm very happy for that. Someone recently described me in a way that I'm stealing for myself to describe myself now as saying Sophia's in the business of leaving things better than she found them, which I love because that kind of really does describe the way that I viewed my time in university. So a couple of things that I have worked on at Bishop's in the effort of leaving Bishop's better than I found it has been that I've been involved with our joint Senate and board task force on equity, diversity, and inclusion. I served as student co-chair for the 2 years of the mandate that it existed. And I've also been volunteering a lot with our student union, first as equity representative, and then as vice president of academic affairs. So pretty involved, and I like to make things more equitable.
This is amazing. What an incredible group that make me shudder at how much time I wasted in my undergrad, where my biggest accomplishment was one time I made some pretty decent brownies, you know? Okay, wonderful. I have a few questions now that I'm going to throw open to the group. And if you would like to drop a thought or a question in the chat, I can play a little bit fast and loose as we go along. So please do. And then at the end, we hope to have some time for a broader Q&A when we can throw things open. But first, I'll ask you, and I'm not, you know, as a group, to tell me about the project that you and the other student fellows are undertaking now. You're undertaking a soon-to-be announced project, and you introduced it at the plenary at the STLHE conference with the theme "Nothing for us without us," which I really loved. Without spilling all the beans, I wondered if you can let me know about the particular challenges that you're hoping to address with this project that you're taking on. Over to you.
I guess I can start it off. So I guess coming back to our plenary that we did, like nothing for us without us, like in our context, it was essentially choices should be made in higher education with student voices at the forefront. And in our project that we're hoping to do is that we hope to amplify these student voices, and kind of just like many student leaders have stories like the ones that you kind of heard from us. Many voices of other student leaders aren't really heard as to like much of an extent. So I guess without spilling the beans too much, we're just trying to fill a gap and to try to find a way in order to make other student leaders' voices heard. And then I'll give it up to the others because they might have a way better explanation than what I did.
No, you were so good. Don't worry about it. What I got from the plenary and from our discussions through the whole process was that we really tried to hone in on like one problem that we thought that existed primarily in the post-secondary education system in Canada. For me, that was a lot to do with international student life, because I am an international student. I'm so originally from India, so my experience in Mount A and in the education system in general is way more nuanced and a lot more complicated than a lot of domestic students' lives are. So I talked about that in my plenary. So, but we also realized that there was too much wrong with the system, that we could not handle everything or tackle everything. So we did try to kind of come up with a good project that was not that not that ambitious, I would say, overly ambitious, so that we can still make some tangible change. But I think, again, without spilling too many of the beans, because a majority of our group is not here right now, but I think what I really thought about was that there was definitely a lack of empathy that exists within the post-secondary education system everywhere. But I feel like, coming from India, of course, Canada is way better. In India, if you have mental health issues, you're a demon. It is what it is. You are ruining the reputation of the family. But mental health here is given more importance. But I think there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of empathy. So I think that's kind of where that's the kind of perspective I was bringing, especially given that international students' lives are just so complicated in Canada, having to survive without your family members being around you, there's so many nuances that go into being an international student. So given that, I was trying, a lack of empathy is what I thought was the main issue. But yeah, we basically wanted to provide a platform for student voices, and to ensure that no decisions were being made for students without hearing from students. So that's kind of why the theme "Nothing for Us Without Us" was there.
Kind of building on what Oorja said as well, we worked with this theme "Nothing for Us Without Us," talking about talk to students, right? We were really prompting people talk to us, include our voices, but we didn't really want anyone to be yeah, I've talked to a student before, I'm good, I'm done, that's all I need to do. So we're kind of also prompting people to ask, okay, which voices are you including? Which voices are you hearing? And which voices are you not hearing? What perspectives are you maybe not considering? And finding a way to provide, reduce barriers to students' voices that might not have been traditionally invited to the table, people whose perspectives have not always been included. How can we reduce barriers for them to get involved? Even just as myself, I'm a first generation student. I don't know all these things necessarily about what we call this hidden curriculum, how to get involved, who to speak to, how to make sure that my voice is heard. But I also think that one of the biggest strengths of first generation students is that we don't have this mindset of oh, that's how it's always been done, because we don't know how it's always been done. So I think that also gives us this more innovative lens. So how can we include those voices, people who aren't, stuck in the rut of the way that things have always been done? How can we bring them into this conversation, include their creativity, their perspectives, as well as students of color, students from different historically marginalized groups? How are we making sure that their voices are included, their perspectives are heard and taken seriously? So not just listening and saying sounds good, but actually acting on it and following up. So that was also part of my speech at the plenary, and part of the importance of the nuance in Nothing for Us Without Us is looking for particular groups.
I think everybody, these wonderful people have explained it all in so much perfect detail already. But I guess to kind of conclude this, I think the craziest thing about this experience has been the fact that we are all so passionate about so many different things, and it's just so eye-opening to sit in a room with 9 other leaders who are your age, who have gone through the exact same experience, and be so passionate about so many different things. When our project is announced, you'll see how we kept it so broad, because there is no way for us to each talk about and kind of challenge our passions in one specific area, because all of us needed our own kind of freedom to be able to have this. And I think it also helped us realize that by developing some sort of platform, we're giving students also the opportunity to be passionate about things that they feel they need to speak about within their education system, because there's 10 of us and there's thousands of students at schools across Canada. So there's no way that we can do one thing to meet everybody's needs. And I think that's also kind of what I spoke about in my part of the plenary was that I don't think that we can all be leaders for others without first leading ourselves. And so by exploring that and exploring your passions and having that freedom to be able to figure out what you want to do and what change you want to make is just as important as helping others figure that out too. So it's going to be exciting. I hope that everybody is interested and wants to kind of help out and participate once it is finally announced.
This is so exciting. I love this. And, you know, we talked early about, you know, the lack of empathy. It's interesting. I just finished a book club called, we were reading a book called The Slow Professor, which is trying to challenge what is essentially a lack of empathy from the system for the individuals. And it's really interesting. Certainly, I imagine from everyone in this room that there's a ton of empathy there. And I think that there's a lot of empathy on the individual level within universities, but there's a kind of lack of systemic empathy. And so I'm really interested about whatever this platform is as being a new cog in that system to help that empathy flow. I really also leading yourself, as you said, Olivia, is a kind of self-empathy, and sometimes just recognizing that passion and the value of it. Speaking about that sort of educational machine that we're all a little bit a part of, and that we all also simultaneously are creating as we are part of it. I wonder if you can speak to maybe your individual passions about a change that you hope that might happen in the way that universities interact with their students. If you had a magic wand and could change something, what would it be?
All I could say
I'll
is
sit here
so
and
much.
think. Oh, sorry, Oorja. I was just like, you
Go
see us
for
all
it.
sit here and think because we're like, how do we choose one thing?
I was like,
won't
so
hold you
much.
to
away.
We would change so much. But I think for me, like I kind of jumped the gun with the empathy comment because I was making my answers up today. So like that's the answer that I wanted to say for this question. But yeah, I think that one thing that I would like to change is the amount of you know, just empathy, maybe just like increasing the amount of empathy training for a lot of these professors who kind of come from the system, who, like you said, are part of the institution that kind of perpetuate this de-individualizing kind of this thing. I feel like Mount A was very, very good already in terms of like giving attention to the individual student. But even in Mount A, I've had experiences. I talked about it in my plenary too, but the one thing that I can remember is my October 23rd on like 2020 fall semester. I was, you know, the pandemic had just hit. It was 6 months down the pandemic, I think. And, you know, I was working 2 jobs to like, you know, because I didn't have a job this summer that I was supposed to get a job and have savings. So I was working 2 jobs in the semester. I was, you know, taking 6 courses because of course my visa got denied. So I had to overload my semesters. And I remember like I was on October 23rd, I was awake till about, for about like 50 hours, 45 hours. And I was so exhausted, I was delirious. And I was like, I finished all my work at 8 p.m. and I was like, I'm gonna go to bed now. And then I realized, of course, I had another assignment due that midnight because why would I not? And then I emailed the professor asking him for an extension, giving him my situation completely. And he denied it outright. And he said that, you know, it was not fair to the other students. It wasn't equal of him to give me an extension when other students have already started giving their assignments in. And that really made me think about the lack of, you know, emphasis on equity that there is within the education system, because yes, you know, we're trying to award people for their merits, but this whole system of meritocracy is so flawed because so many institutions, you know, work to oppress and to marginalize communities. You know, even if they're not doing it like outright, it's just it's institutionalized. So like there are lots of barriers that international students, BIPOC students, you know, students coming from you know, broken homes, etc., that they face, that they cannot perform at the same academic level. than, you know, people who can, you know, don't face those issues. So I feel like that empathy would lead to more equity. And that's kind of what I want to do with my work with post-secondary education, because I think that is extremely important to look at when you are looking at the individual, as student as an individual. Sorry, I ranted for a second, but that's kind of what I was looking at.
No problem. I love a rant. You're getting a lot of love, Oorja, in the comments and from the emojis. So thank you so much for sharing. I think that's great. Anyone else?
I can jump in. So mine would definitely be about the ways that we interact with students particularly. I'm very focused on the student voice, and like if I had to pick just one thing to change, it would really be about trusting students. So like listening to our voices and really trusting that we do know what we're talking about. Like when you bring students into the room and we're like, hey, this is the kind of support that we need in order to succeed. And then people are like, I don't actually think that's the case. We're going to do this other thing instead. That's so infuriating because we do know what we're talking about. We do know what our own experiences are. Or for example, when as students of color, we're saying, hey, our experiences in this institution are different from white students, and they are different in really important ways that hinder our ability to succeed and to be a part of this community, you know, and then people like not necessarily believing that, being like, well, that wasn't my experience, so I don't think that's your experience. Or, well, I was never discriminated against in that way, so you have never been discriminated against in that way. So really trusting students that they really are the experts of their own experiences, or saying like, oh, well, this is what our advertisements say, so this is what our institution is. That's really cool for you that you get to experience that, but not everybody has that. We all come from different backgrounds. We all experience things in different ways. And I think really believing that the people who are telling you that there is a problem are the ones who have experienced that problem, and to trust that they are being truthful and that it takes a lot to open up about that. So really taking what students say really seriously, trusting them and believing them and acting on it. If that's 3 things, I don't know, but like the number 1 thing would be trusting students.
I love that. Thank you. And you know what? It's fine. You can wrap 3 into 1. I'll allow it. And I think that empathy, like there's a strong tie here between empathy and trust. I think that when you believe that the student is a whole person, you know, then it is easier to have empathy with them and not a sort of little learning automaton who comes in and learns and then goes away. Olivia, Ben, you don't have to answer, but I just wondered if you have something off the top of the cuff.
Yeah, I can go. I mean, it kind of goes along with what Sufia said. The one thing I would kind of change, I guess, would be more integration of students as partners, so kind of like listening to students, kind of like Sufia said, because like there's so much change that could be done and how the system could be run as a whole, like from individual classes to the whole system. So there, and like with many people come from different backgrounds, like I think students and giving voice to students can really, and integrating that into classroom and to education as a whole can really help us all out. And I'll even like give them a little example. So during my time in the OLTC program, like professors actually came to students in order to help with their classroom as a whole. And they kind of like went to us to ask for advice on how to run the classroom. And it was like absolutely amazing. And just recently, like one of the professors from this program came up to us and said like how much it revolutionized his class, like how much like the student voice like really like mattered in integration into his classroom, and how it like completely revolutionized how he's able to teach and what his like ratings are in his classroom and how much people are engaging. So I guess having more integration of students as partners would be mine.
I love that. I love that. And I'm seeing a strong sort of thread that ties all of these together as well. In order to be in real partnership with students, you have to trust them. You have to see them as just as much of a person as you are, as the instructor. Olivia, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'll tie it up again. And mine kind of goes hand in hand with everything that everybody said. Again, I always kind of go back to the self. It's probably the yoga teacher in me a little bit. But I'd love to see universities give students more opportunities to be able to trust themselves and to be able to have empathy towards themselves and to be able to find themselves as a partner in things that they do. I so often, I mean, all of my peers, even, or not all of my peers, that's a little bit generalized, but so many people that I run into on campus, they're just so stressed. Like everybody is so exhausted all the time that they don't have time to be a partner. They don't have time to trust themselves. They don't have time to be empathetic towards themselves because they're suffering and they can barely breathe in their academic environment already as a whole. So again, that's my thing is like and that's what I'm trying to do on campus with different initiatives that I'm doing is in taking part in and creating is I'm hoping to kind of give students the opportunity to learn how to give themselves that space to be able to take the time and to enjoy and invest themselves in all of these different opportunities that hopefully we can actually create on university campuses or that they can create themselves, because that's the thing is that there's the 10 of us and the countless other student leaders who are doing the work. But I mean, imagine if every single university student was their own leader, like how much stuff we would get done, how many different opportunities and experiences would be able to be offered to students across campuses in Canada and around the world. So that's my thing. I always kind of go back to the self, and it'd be just so wonderful to be able to change how students see themselves and the opportunities that they are able to give themselves. Just by getting a bit, not necessarily getting a break, but finding ways to be able to have a break in their studies and actually enjoy their studies. So that's me.
If I can go again, love
Yeah.
having the spotlight on me, but but just to kind of build on that, because I just thought about it. First of all, I want to just thank Liv publicly. We're all so passionate about everything, but she just brings us down and calms us down, and she really brings us to the point again, because we can always deviate. So she's very good at summarizing everything. So I really like that. And plus I'm also a yoga, I also do yoga in my daily life, so it's really nice to see someone who's also passionate about breathing and grounding and everything. But just to kind of go off of what we were talking about is that I, as a person who also wants to become a professor, that's my goal in life, is to become a professor. I understand that people have a lot of passion for the courses that they've developed. They've taken time to perfect, and they've taken time to, create, to have the best student experience. But I think a lot of professors forget that, again, coming back to equity, that a lot of people, some students may not be able to give the time to your course than they would have been able to otherwise, and stuff like that. So I really, even in my plenary, I asked the people there in the audience that, as educators, do you think that a person completing your assignment is more important than them taking care of themselves? And I think that is something that's really important to keep in mind as educators, that, the best experience I've ever had is with Dr. Andrews, who basically gave me, a free week, because I went through something very traumatic last October. Maybe October is just not my time. So I went through something really, really harsh, and she didn't ask me any questions. She was just like, you can take all the time you need, it's not an issue. And she allowed me to drop a major assignment of the course and make it up to her through a summer internship that I did with her. So it's kind of those experiences that have actually kept me going over the last 3 years. Then, the same professor as last October, he just moved my midterm from Tuesday to Thursday. He was like, that's the most I can do for you today. So it's kind of how as educators do we accommodate these individuals within the education system.
That's terrific. And Danny Diaz has said in the chat that self-care is really important, and space needs to be created for it to happen. And I think about you, Oorja, in that one of the bad Octobers, that you just didn't have, because of the realities of what it is to be a student in 2022. School cost a lot, and was very busy 25 years ago when I was in my undergrad, and it's even more now. And I think that we have to be understanding of that, because those things have to happen. You have to be living in order to be learning. And so I think we need to rebuild the structures. And what you said, Olivia, you keep bringing up the rear, but you keep really, you feed me perfect segues, because my next question is about what you would say to students who are coming in. Do you have advice that you would like to give to the first year students who are going to be starting their undergraduate experience this year at Maple Leaf Schools, or maybe anywhere else, and maybe also to the instructors who are going to be working with those first year students in their first weeks and months as part of the university system in just a few weeks' time? I'm going to start with you, Olivia, because you've brought us, so I'm just going to throw to you and see where it goes from there.
Awesome. Yeah, no, for sure. I'm happy to. I love this question so much because it's so simple to me, but at the same time, it's the scariest thing ever. But my answer is just to say hello. Like, it is like, again, it's to kind of create that connection. It's that first step. And it is like, I can remember, I get like goosebumps thinking about saying hello to people in my first week of university. It was terrifying. I hated it. Like, it was awful. But I remember I made a friend, and 3 months later, that friend came up to me, and since has actually gone to a different university, but came up to me and said, that day that you said hello to me? And I was like, yeah, I remember that, because you were one of the first people I said hello to. And she was like, I hadn't talked to a single person that entire day. Like, that was the first time that somebody had said anything to me. And to me, it was just like, oh, like, thank goodness I did something. Like, thank goodness somebody did anything, kind of thing, right? So it was just so wonderful. So if you're a first year student, or if you're a prof who is talking to students, like, just say hello. And I guess another little thing too, and you can steal this, but my first day of classes in first year, for both semesters, I took a cue card and wrote a bunch of fun facts about me and handed it to all my profs. And I color coded it in highlighters as well. So that just tells you who I am as a person. But and they were all the exact same, but I handed them to each of my profs and was just like, here's a little bit about myself. And one of those profs I go out to tea with once a month and go to lunch with her, and she was my nominator for this award as well. So it did work itself out in the end. So yeah, those are my tips.
I think that is incredible, and I have a first year course that I'm teaching at Mount Allison this year. So I'm gonna have my students I'm gonna make them write me cards with fun facts. Thank you, Olivia.
Thank you.
Anyone else? No, that's it.
I can
Just the
jump
cue
in.
cards.
I can.
Go ahead, Sufia.
Awesome. So for first year students, my advice always is just go for it. Whatever you're thinking of doing, just do it. If you're like, oh, I'm on the fence about joining a club, don't be on the fence. Just do it. You can always like pull back later. But I would say in first year, like, do all of the things. Just do all of it. Figure out what you're passionate about, see where your people are. And then in second year, you can always pull back. Because I was told when I was entering university, like, oh, first year, scope out like classes, like see how much work your classes take, and then you can join clubs in second year. I'm like, do the opposite. Join all your clubs, join all your organizations, meet all the people in first year, and then figure out what you like. So then you can kind of like hone in on those things as you move forward. So just go for all of it. Anything you're thinking of doing, do it. For instructors who are working with first year students, I'm going to do like the opposite. Roll it back, guys. Roll it back. Do significantly less. But really in terms of like assignments and stuff, like these students who are entering their first year of university at this point of a pandemic are so brave, so motivated, so determined, and probably so close to burning out if they haven't already. And a lot of us have also, like, in these really formative years of our lives of development, have been isolated. So students who are entering university that are like, let's say like 19 years old, 18, 19 years old now, like they spent their late teens isolated during a pandemic. It's really hard to learn how to make friends again. So kind of like icebreakers, like help people meet each other, and don't be too harsh on these guys because they're not going to be what a first year student was before the pandemic, and they're not going to be what a first year student like ever is again. It's a completely unique situation for them. So really like having that compassion, having that empathy, trusting them, and just knowing that they're doing their best. Whatever that looks like, they are doing their best, I promise.
Oh, that's beautiful. How much empathy is in that? Yeah, a colleague of mine pointed out that for the first year students coming in this fall, their last regular year of school was grade 9. And that's a long, long time ago. Oorja, Ben?
I can give her. I mean, it's kind of basically playing off what both Sufia and Liv kind of said. So one of my mentors, one of the biggest takeaways that I ever got from him is building your pyramid. So like right now, like going into first year university, you're kind of like building your pyramid of like who you are as a person. So right now, like going into first year, you're building that base. So you obviously should get involved and try and get as many experiences as possible. And you try and go out and kind of like, as Liv said, just say hello to people because you don't know where those relationships can bring you. And you will be surprised at the amazing profs and the amazing students and amazing people that you'll be able to meet like throughout this program that you have in front of you. And then I guess for the instructors, try and maybe find ways to get students involved. Maybe like work in integrated learning or things like that, where you can bring students outside the classroom, but have like in-class assignments, I guess, through the work in integrated learning. So what Angie did, I guess, is an example, is that one thing that I benefited from is her Fit for Life program. And it takes 7 to 9-year-olds and we teach them these things that we are learning in class. And you really get a lot of experience out of that. And you get to meet a bunch of people in the community through that way. I thought that was like very useful for myself. And even just like daily check-ins for professors like that. That was awesome. Like anytime we get those. So as we've been saying, like mental health is so important. So yeah, daily check-ins would be absolutely awesome.
That's beautiful, Ben. I really love that. And the idea of doing the things that help people to meet people, to build that base as instructors. I'm really excited about that for my course as well. I'm taking furious notes over here and I couldn't figure out how to spell pyramid. Oorja, can I throw to you?
Yeah, so I think my it kind of goes the opposite way, is that I would suggest one thing that students kind of forget to do. First of all, dismantle this whole romanticization of depression and this whole of suffering that students have, that, oh, I did not sleep for 3 days, and like this romanticization of like hard work that they put in. I think that's one of the things that I did wrong when I started university, and I allowed myself to fall into the cycle of just bad habits, not taking care of myself. So alongside that same thing, I think that people students need to start coming up with ways for self-care. I think that's really important. And self-care is not the Pinterest white girl self-care is what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about like, taking a bubble bath, or like, I'm talking about just 3 things in the day that you find that, is your self-care. For me, it was getting Ada's coffee. If you've not had it, if you're ever in Sackville, get an Ada's coffee. And, for me, it was like just taking that 5-minute meditation. And so there's 3 things. Actually, my best friend, my childhood friend, is here right now, Dhriti. She's from India, so we have all over the world. But she's actually tuning in from India, and she's the one who taught me that you take care of yourself. That's the main thing. I think the final advice I would give students is that make the effort to understand the resources available within the university. I think alongside the same kind of line of people just romanticizing their suffering, there is also a means of not looking at the resources that are already available. And I think, it's not perfect, of course, as a future educator, is what I like to call myself, but as a future educator, like I know that, system is not perfect. And of course you can't make a tangible change when the system is not perfect, but in order to make change in the system, you need to be able to work with the system. And I truly believe that. And I think, students don't often like try to go for the support available that's already available. And often like people of course don't like market it, like organizers, especially universities, are very bad at marketing their resources. As a commerce student, I think that's the biggest downfall of because you have these resources but nobody knows about them. But like as students as well, we need to meet them in the middle and meet them halfway to be able to kind of benefit from the resources available. And I think just take charge. And I think one thing that we need to stop doing is feeling sorry for ourselves, is what I did my entire student life. So just like crying every 2 days about like how much work I had. I think that's instead of that, I should have taken charge and like try to make change. But of course not everyone can do that, but if you have the capacity to do that, I think meeting the education system halfway is the way to go, at least until the 3M NSF can make a tangible change with the project. Until then, you do your part to it.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. All of this is terrific. We've got a great thought from Rudy as well in the chat. Having taught 40 years, I'd suggest 1, know your students' names, and 2, conceive of your interactions as conversations and not as lectures. I think that is a really great thing, Rudy. Thank you for sharing. And I will say, as advice for faculty about this idea of marketing the programs that students need, one thing that I developed with my colleague, Jordy Hepburn, who was a counselor at Bishop's and is now with Nova Scotia Community College. But I developed slides when I'm at school. So when I'm lecturing, my last slide is always the same, and it's the contact information for mental health services, wherever that is, and for student support services. And I try, in order to normalize it, and in order for just so that when an individual student needs it, then the information shows up for them at the time they need it. They don't have to go digging for it. And I share all my slides with them so it's easily available. That does not take a long time. And then you just plop it as the last slide every week. Okay, this is incredible. We've got 10 minutes left, and I would love to throw the floor open to questions from our audience for these incredible innovators, leaders. You can type them into the chat. You can raise your hand virtually. You can just turn your camera on and raise your hand in the classic way. Firas, I see you. Would you like to ask something?
Yes. Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here. It's been really great to hear all your insight. My question is, I'll try I wrote it out because I thought I had to text it in. So I'm just wondering what advice you have for faculty members at higher education institutions that are wanting to change something that's at the core of academics, which is grades. There's a movement called ungrading that aims to decenter our obsession, not just students, but instructors and administrators as well, to decenter their obsession with points and grades and emphasize feedback and growth. Basically bring back the joy of learning back into higher education, which I think is pretty much gone because we've tried to bring in so much extrinsic motivation. And so I think student voices are essential to this, but I've met a lot of resistance when I try to bring that into my work with comments like, well, of course the students want that. There's no grades, there's less pressure. They don't want, they'll do less work. And of course, I think it's not that at all. It's not any easier or harder, it's just different. And you're focusing on different parts of learning rather than chasing after grades. So I know it's a big topic, but just that last minor point about how to bring student voices in when you know the natural reaction will be just, why would the student say no to this, right? That kind of thing.
Super. Olivia, I saw your hand first, and then Oorja.
Awesome, thank you. I think this is an awesome question, and immediately it throws me back into, I think it was the opening speech at the conference where Jessica Riddell was talking about some salmon. and she was saying how, the salmon who know where to go, who know how to get to the right place, like grades are awesome. For me, as a student who likes learning and who likes school, I'm terrified of the idea of grades not being there, because that's my thing. Like, I'm a good student, I know that. So academics for me is my happy place. But for so many students that I see, it's not. Like, yes, you're right, everybody would not want grades, because it's the most stressful, it's the most horribly toxic part of one of our education systems is that. So I think, again, the thing to do with that is to go into your institution and to talk to students from all different parts, to talk to student leaders who are getting the 4.0s, and to also talk to student leaders who are getting the 1.0s, and to be like, why is this a good thing? Why are we clinging on to these things? And to bring those voices and to help support those voices and bring them into your structure, or whatever you're looking to kind of change within your institution, and bring that up, because there's a lot more. Again, if you get a little rally of students behind you, that will make a bigger difference than like one faculty member or one student. Again, it's all about that connection and that support, and if we can kind of build up that support and build that connection and integrate everybody's voices in a certain way, that makes a lot more of a difference, I think, than just kind of, I've done it enough. I've showed it to the hills and hoped that somebody heard me, and nobody did, because everybody's shouting in a different direction on the hill. But once you kind of get those voices together, that's when it starts to make a difference. So my word of advice, I guess, as a student who does like grades, but completely sees the not value of them, is to kind of bring all of us together and to talk about that specifically in your institution, because once you make a small change, that's when those baby steps starting adding up. And then if somebody sees that you've done it somewheres, that makes them so much more interested in doing that somewhere else. So that's my word of advice.
Wonderful. Thank you.
My word of advice would be to talk to Dr. Andrews. Just because she really is the light of my life. I think Susan Andrews, like for her course, she got funding from the Civil Project, right? And she basically paid all of us in the class $500 stipend to audit the books of the Children's Play School to gauge the representativeness of those books. The course was originally about religious texts of East Asia. So it was a complete pivot from there. But like, even with that pivot, we learned so much. And I think using her as an example could help you kind of bolster support for it. And I think she could definitely talk a lot more about, the importance of work integrated learning. And I think as someone also who has like, who thrives off of academic validation, I think I saw the value of learning within, this space of like doing it instead of just, rote learning, as I have always done in my life. And yeah, I think that would be my advice. And I think one thing that I know Tony Roberts does, because I have a friend who did their course, basically start your grading at A+. That's what even Dr. Andrews does. Like they start their grading at A+, and then it goes, and if you don't do the assignments, you get an A, or if you do it very badly, then you get a B. So it starts off a student with the prospect of getting a good grade, so they don't have to worry about the grade. They can just do the work as per their capacity. So that really does help too, I think.
Wonderful. We've just got a couple minutes left, and I wonder if there is another question that we could maybe squeeze in, because I want to just get everything we can from these incredible students and former students. Yes, Anika?
Hi, perfect. You got my name. Hi, folks. Great to see you all again, and thank you for all that you shared. I guess keeping time in consideration and recognizing that all of you have put so much of your personal experiences so vulnerably to share with all of us. I'd love to know, what is it that organizations, faculty, schools can do to make you folks feel valued? I know sometimes there's conversations about, compensation, but all of these things, but I don't want us to be, drawing from a well that's drying up. I want you folks to make sure that you also are feeling valued and that your efforts are going somewhere that isn't just, into an abyss. So I guess my question to you, what is something that these groups, organizations, faculty, schools can do to make sure that the work that you're putting in, all the emotional labor you're doing, is valued?
Wonderful. What a great question. Olivia, may I throw to you?
I'm sorry, I was the last one to answer, and now I'm like, I want to answer these ones. I again, like, as a yoga instructor, for example, I do not ask anybody who attends my classes to compensate me in any way. Their presence is enough. So right now, seeing so many faces on my screen and I'm not only knowing about 5 of you, it's amazing to be able to be like, oh my gosh, there's so many people who want to listen. There's so many people, I just sent this in the chat too. There's so many people who want to support this. And that's amazing. That is the best feeling as a student, to feel that support. Again, like I'm hoping to kind of start an initiative this upcoming school year for my institution. And I went and met with this individual in administration, and they're like, well, what can I do for you? Like, what do you need? And I was like, whoa, I've never been asked what I need. I've always been telling people that this is what I'm going to do, and that I just need to make sure that they know I'm doing it. And it's so cool to be asked, like, well, what do you need? What do you need help with? How can I support this? And that's, again, like, doing this, showing up to these types of things and talking and asking questions and wanting to hear our voices. Like, this is the type of support that I appreciate and love so much. And I know that all my fellows likely have other things too, but this is just so meaningful to me. So that's my thing. As broke as I am, I don't want money.
Thank you very much, Olivia. Sufia.
Not to invalidate any of that, I will say pay students always. I'm always going to say that. I don't think we should ever ask students to take on work without paying them. And I think we also need to recognize that students in a university are paying to be there in the first place. So like, we're losing money on this effort. So I'm always going to say pay your students. But beyond that, I also want to say that like supporting students, even with just the smallest tasks when they're doing this work, can have the biggest difference. So like a quick example I want to give is that I really wanted to put something out during Ramadan this year, because Ramadan was at the same time as like finals. And I was like, people need to know, like, our Muslim students need to know what resources are available. We need to make sure that people are aware that this is happening at all, how it would affect their ability to, for example, do an oral presentation. I can't drink water, you know? So being able to get that information out, and I was talking to some people and I was like, I really want to do this. I don't have the time because it's also finals for me and I'm also a student. And so I had someone who was very, very supportive, was just like, tell me, like, explain to me what you want to say. I will write it up and then you can approve it and we'll send it out. So even just the act of typing it out was too much for me to take on at that time. So having somebody support with that kind of small task of just typing out the words that I said, or I had a Zoom call that was like, we had the transcription on. So like the typing is done. You can pull what you need from it, because I'm a much faster talker than I am typer. So being able to like work with students in whatever way is most helpful for them, and seeing what they need the support with and being able to provide it, but then also having that follow up in terms of what is the project. So if somebody is asking for my opinion on such and such issue, and then I never hear from them again, and I'm like, okay, well, what was the point of that? You know, telling me why you're asking, what you're going to do with that information. And then once you have done it, coming back and saying, hey, this is what we've done, or this is where it's going, just a quick update. Thank you for supporting. Anything else you want to share, kind of thing. So always having that it's a conversation and not just like a one-way stealing my thoughts and opinions and then running away with them, but making sure that we're involved at every step of the process.
Well, what a great place to end, which is about the conversation. And I hope this is the start of many conversations. I really am excited about the project that's upcoming from the 4 of you and your 6 other compatriots. I'm very grateful to all 4 of you for sharing with us today and for being such shining lights and guides for students coming behind you and also the faculty whom you work with. Thank you very much. And